the house that was already living there. When we bought our first home in rural Pennsylvania, it felt like winning a private lottery. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and woods stretching endlessly behind the property. The realtor told us the previous owners moved out suddenly due to a job transfer overseas. No drama. No tragedy. Just a quick sale. The price was lower than expected, but in 2023, nobody questions a miracle. My wife Jenna loved the kitchen. I loved the silence. Our 6-year-old son, Caleb, loved his new room upstairs. The first night felt normal, almost too normal. Boxes stacked in hallways. The smell of fresh paint barely covering something older underneath. Caleb insisted his closet door stay open because he said the room felt crowded when it was closed. We laughed it off. New houses make weird sounds. Wood expands. Pipes knock. Wind whispers through siding. That's what I told myself at 2:17 a.m. when I heard slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the upstairs hallway. I checked Caleb first. He was asleep, mouth slightly open, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Jenna was beside me in bed, breathing steadily. The footsteps continued. Not random creaks, weight shifting across floorboards. Step. Pause. Step. As if someone unfamiliar with the layout was testing each plank. I grabbed the baseball, but I kept near the bed and opened our door. The hallway was empty, but the air felt warmer than it should have been. I convinced myself it was nerves. First night anxiety. But the second night, it happened again, earlier this time. 11:43 p.m. We were all awake watching TV when something heavy dragged across the upstairs floor. A scraping sound. Long, slow. Intentional. Caleb froze mid-sentence. "Dad, that's not the house." His voice trembled in a way I'd never heard before. I muted the TV. The dragging continued, then stopped directly above us. I ran upstairs fast enough to take 2 steps at a time. Caleb's room door was closed. We always left it open. I know that because Jenna never lets doors shut at night. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear myself breathe. I pushed the door open. Nothing looked disturbed. Toy box closed. Bed untouched. Closet door wide open. But the window was unlocked. We had locked every window before moving in. I checked them personally. The window screen had a small tear near the bottom corner, almost hidden. Not large enough for an adult, but large enough for someone to test the latch from outside. I stepped back and looked toward the woods. It was pitch black beyond the tree line. No movement. No flashlights. Just silence thick enough to feel physical. The police came. They checked the perimeter. No footprints. No broken branches. Nothing disturbed. The officer told me raccoons can sometimes mess with older window latches. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But raccoons don't drag furniture. And raccoons don't close doors behind them. That's when Jenna mentioned something she hadn't told me yet. The attic hatch in the hallway had been slightly open when she walked past it earlier that day. I stared up at the square outline in the ceiling. We hadn't been up there since moving in. The inspector said it was empty except for old insulation. I grabbed a ladder from the garage and pushed the hatch open. A wave of heat hit my face. Not dusty air. Heat. Like someone had been breathing up there. I lifted myself halfway inside and shined my flashlight across the beams. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Then I noticed it. A sleeping bag in the far corner. Dark blue. Rolled halfway open. There was a plastic grocery bag beside it. Inside were empty water bottles, protein bar wrappers, and something else. A small, spiral notebook. Someone had been living in our attic, and they hadn't been gone long. My hand shook as I opened the notebook. Dates. Scribbled entries. The earliest one from 3 months ago. The latest, from 2 nights before we moved in. The writing was messy, erratic. Short sentences. They're coming. New family soon. Must stay quiet. The boy talks in his sleep. I felt my stomach drop. We had only lived there for 4 days. I didn't finish reading it up there. I climbed down, locked the hatch, and told Jenna everything. We called the police again. This time they searched the attic thoroughly. No one inside. No fingerprints they could use. The officer told us about something called phrogging. People secretly living in other people's homes. It happens more than you think, he said. But that didn't explain what happened next. Because that night, after the police left, we heard footsteps again. Above us. In the attic. Slow. Careful. Deliberate. I didn't move. Not at first. The sound above us was subtle. Not stomping, not frantic. Just pressure shifting across the beams. A human rhythm. Step. Wait. Step. Jenna's hand tightened around mine in the dark. Caleb was asleep down the hall. I told myself it could be the house settling again. But houses don't hesitate between steps. They don't stop directly above your bed. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam trembled as I aimed it at the attic hatch in the hallway. It was closed. Locked. I know it was. I checked it twice after the police left. The footsteps continued, directly above the hatch now. A slow dragging sound followed, like fabric moving across wood. My mouth went dry. Whoever had been up there hadn't left. I told Jenna to lock herself and Caleb in his room and not open the door unless I said our safe word. I didn't even know why I whispered. Maybe because something in me believed it could hear us. I climbed the ladder again, every rung creaking under my weight. The attic was silent now. Too silent. I pushed the hatch open carefully. No sudden movement. No sound. Just thick darkness. The sleeping bag was gone. The water bottles were gone. The notebook was gone. Only flattened insulation remained where someone had been lying. The air was warmer than the rest of the house, noticeably warmer. Like body heat lingering in a confined space. I swept the flashlight beam slowly across the beams, corners, insulation. That's when I saw it. Fresh scuff marks leading toward the far edge of the attic. Our attic didn't extend past that wall, at least that's what the inspector said. But the scuffs led directly into the drywall panel separating the attic from the outer roof slope. I stepped closer and pressed on it. It shifted. Slightly. Not broken. Modified. I pushed harder. A narrow section gave way inward, revealing a dark crawl space I hadn't known existed. The smell hit me first. Sweat. Mold. Something metallic. I shined the light inside. It was barely 3 feet high, just enough room to crawl. And inside, I saw movement. Not running. Not lunging. Crawling. Away from me. I dropped the flashlight in shock. It clattered against the wood. The movement stopped instantly. Silence. I grabbed the light again and shouted that the police were already on their way. No response. Just breathing. Slow. Controlled. Deliberate. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't desperate. It sounded patient. Like it knew something I didn't. I scrambled down the ladder and called 911 with shaking fingers. Jenna was crying quietly, holding Caleb in the hallway. I told the dispatcher someone was still inside the attic crawlspace. She told me officers were on the way. Those 7 minutes felt like 7 hours. Every small noise sounded amplified. Walls creaking, pipes ticking, the wind brushing siding. Then we heard it. A soft knock. 3 taps. From inside the wall. Caleb buried his face in Jenna's shoulder. I stared at the ceiling, pulse hammering. The knocking came again, closer to Caleb's bedroom this time. Not random. Not structural. Intentional. Like someone mapping the inside of our house from within the walls. Police sirens finally broke the silence. The knocking stopped immediately. Officers cleared the attic with weapons drawn. They forced open the crawlspace fully. They searched it with K9 units. Thermal cameras. Nothing. No one. No exit route. No vent large enough for escape. Just a narrow passage ending in insulation and wood framing. But they did find something. A small battery-powered baby monitor. Taped between 2 beams. Facing downward. Pointed directly at Caleb's bedroom ceiling vent. It wasn't ours. We never installed one. The batteries were fresh. The officer removed it carefully and bagged it as evidence. That's when we noticed something even worse. The vent above Caleb's closet had tiny scratch marks around the screws, as if someone had loosened and retightened it multiple times. We didn't stay another night. The police increased patrols, but they couldn't explain how someone entered or exited. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No disturbed soil. It was as if the person had dissolved into the structure of the house itself. 2 weeks later, while staying at a hotel, I received a call from a detective. They identified a partial print from the notebook found earlier. It matched a man arrested 3 states away for breaking into vacant homes and living inside them undetected for months. He was in custody. In Oregon. Arrested the night we heard the final footsteps. The detective said the timeline didn't add up. He couldn't physically have been in our attic that night. I didn't know what to say to that. We never went back inside the house. We sold it at a loss 3 months later. Full disclosure included. The new owners moved in last fall. Last week, Jenna received a message from the wife. She asked if we had ever heard knocking in the walls. The basement door that was never there. When we moved into our new home in Columbus, Ohio, the first thing that sold us was the finished basement. Fresh carpet, recessed lighting, a built-in bar that looks straight out of a renovation show. The listing said recently remodeled. The previous owners were relocating quickly after a divorce. We didn't ask many questions. The house inspection came back clean. Structurally solid. No water damage. No foundation cracks. Just a perfect suburban home at a suspiciously reasonable price. The basement felt warmer than the rest of the house, but we assumed it was insulation. My husband Mark planned to turn it into a home theater. The first week was uneventful. Quiet neighbors. No strange sounds. No issues. Until the 8th night. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was someone closing a heavy door downstairs. Not a slam. Just a slow, solid click. Mark said it was probably the HVAC system cycling. But our system was in the garage. I lay awake listening. 5 minutes passed. Then I heard something else. A low, dragging noise across carpet. Like furniture shifting. I nudged Mark again. He groaned, grabbed his phone, and headed downstairs. I waited at the top of the steps. The basement lights were off. He flipped the switch. Nothing had moved. The bar stools were in place. The sectional couch untouched. But something felt different. Mark stood still for a moment. "Did you close this?" he asked. At the far end of the basement wall, partially hidden behind a tall bookshelf, was a narrow white door. I had never seen it before. We assumed it led to storage. But during the inspection, no one mentioned a separate storage room. The house blueprint didn't show one either. The bookshelf had been positioned perfectly to block most of it from view. Mark pushed the shelf aside with effort. The door handle was cold. Not dusty. Recently used. When he opened it, we both expected shelves or a utility closet. Instead, we saw wooden stairs leading down further. Unfinished. Narrow. Dark. The air that drifted up was damp and heavy, older than the rest of the house. Mark laughed nervously and said it must be part of the original foundation before the remodel. We grabbed flashlights and stepped inside. The stairs creaked with each step. At the bottom was a small concrete room. No drywall. No carpet. Just exposed stone foundation and a single pull chain light hanging from the ceiling. Mark pulled it. The bulb flickered weakly to life. The room was mostly empty, except for a metal chair positioned in the center, facing the wall. I felt my stomach tighten. There were faint scratch marks on the wall in front of the chair. Not random. Repetitive. About shoulder height. Mark stepped closer and ran his fingers along the grooves. "Probably old damage," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. That's when I noticed something else. A camera mount in the upper corner of the room. No camera attached. Just wiring cut cleanly. The wire ran upward through the ceiling, toward the finished basement above us. My chest felt tight. The remodel suddenly felt less like an upgrade and more like a cover-up. Mark traced the wire as far as he could before it disappeared into drywall. We stood there in silence. Then the pull chain light went out. Not flickered. Not dimmed. Off. Total darkness swallowed us. I gasped and dropped my flashlight. Mark's beam shook wildly across the walls. "It's fine," he whispered. "Probably loose wiring." But neither of us moved toward the stairs, because we both heard it. Footsteps. Directly above us. In the finished basement. We were both downstairs. Alone. The footsteps were slow. Heavy. Crossing from one end of the basement to the other. Then stopping directly above the hidden door. Dust sifted down from the ceiling beams. Mark didn't speak. He just moved toward the stairs carefully. Each step upward felt like walking toward something waiting. When we reached the basement level, the lights were on. We had turned them off before entering the hidden room. The bookshelf was back in place, covering the door completely. Mark stared at it. We hadn't moved it back. It had taken both of us to push it aside earlier. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Mark checked the breaker panel. Nothing tripped. No wiring issues. We called a realtor to ask about the hidden lower room. She claimed she had no idea it existed. Said it wasn't disclosed by the sellers. But when Mark requested previous renovation permits from the city, something strange came up. There were no permits filed for finishing the basement. 2 days later, we had a contractor inspect the hidden room. He told us the concrete foundation was original, built with the house in 1984. But the finished basement upstairs? That was redone within the last year. Quickly, cheaply, almost rushed, like someone needed to conceal something. Then he said something I'll never forget. There's no external access to that lower room. No windows. No ground-level doors. No ventilation shafts large enough for entry. The only way in or out was through that narrow staircase hidden behind the bookshelf. Which meant, if someone had been walking above us that night, they had to already be inside the house. After the contractor left, the house felt different. Not haunted. Not dramatic. Just occupied. Like we were sharing it with something patient. Mark installed security cameras inside and outside the house that same afternoon. Front door. Back door. Basement. Stairwell. Motion alerts activated. If someone was inside, we'd know. That night, at 2:11 a.m., Mark's phone buzzed. Motion detected. Basement camera. We both stared at the live feed. The finished basement looked empty at first. The sectional couch untouched. The bar stool still. Then the camera flickered slightly, just for half a second. When the image stabilized, the bookshelf was shifted 3 inches to the left. Neither of us had moved it. The hidden door behind it was visible. Slightly open. Mark grabbed the baseball bat again. I followed behind him despite him telling me to stay upstairs. Every step down the staircase felt heavier than the last. The basement lights were off. We hadn't turned them off before bed. Mark flipped the switch. The bookshelf was perfectly aligned. The narrow door was closed. Completely sealed. We checked the footage again from the top of the stairs. The recorded clip clearly showed the shift. The door opening. But when the timestamp ended, the screen glitched with static before cutting off. The file was corrupted beyond that point. The motion alert triggered again. From inside the hidden lower room. We had installed a small camera down there earlier that evening. Mark opened the app feed. The screen was black at first. Then faint gray shapes appeared as the night vision activated. The metal chair was no longer facing the wall. It was facing the stairs. Facing directly up toward us. My throat tightened. We hadn't gone back down there after installing the camera. Mark's breathing grew shallow. Slowly, the camera image shifted, not because the camera moved, but because something passed in front of it. Close. Too close. A blur. Then the feed went dead. Battery failure. But we had wired that camera directly into the outlet upstairs. That's when we heard it. A faint metallic scrape. From behind the bookshelf. Mark didn't hesitate this time. He shoved the shelf aside violently, revealing the narrow door. It was unlocked. Slowly, he pulled it open. The wooden stairs creaked again as we descended. The pull-chain light was already on. The metal chair sat in the center of the room, facing the stairs exactly as seen on camera. And something was sitting on it. Not a person. A cardboard box. Old. Dusty. With our names written on it. I felt dizzy. Mark stepped forward cautiously and opened the box. Inside were printed photographs. Dozens of them. Photos of our house from outside, taken recently. Some during the day. Some at night. Some through our windows. There were also photos from inside. Of us. Sleeping. Every photo angle was high. Near the ceiling. Like they were taken from vents or corners. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. On the bottom of the box was a small digital voice recorder. Mark pressed play. Static filled the room for several seconds. Then whispering. Not clear words. Just breath. Listening. The whispering stopped. Then a single sentence played clearly. "You weren't the first." The recording ended. At that exact moment, the basement door upstairs slammed shut. The sound echoed down the staircase violently. The light bulb above us flickered once, twice, then went out again. Complete darkness. Mark dropped the recorder and grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the stairs. Halfway up, we heard movement below us. Not scrambling, not running, standing, right where the chair had been, breathing. We didn't look back. We ran. We left the house that night and called the police from our car. Officers searched the property thoroughly. No forced entry. No one inside. No signs of hidden passageways beyond the staircase we already knew about. The box of photos? Gone. The recorder? Gone. The metal chair? Back to facing the wall. The only thing left behind was one photograph on the concrete floor. It was taken from inside the hidden lower room, angled upward toward the basement ceiling. In the photo, faintly visible through a vent grate, was someone standing in the finished basement above, watching the door, waiting. But here's the part that still keeps me awake. The person in that photograph wasn't a stranger. It was the previous homeowner. And according to public records, he died in that house 6 months before it was remodeled. If you want more disturbing true home horror stories that feel too real, like this video. Comment part 3 if you're ready for the next story. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's hiding in the dark.